The regular Louisville Metro Council meeting of June the 23rd, 2022 will please come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting is being held pursuant to KRS 61.826 and Council Rule 5A. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Bowens.
Here.
Councilmember Shanklin.
Present.
Councilmember Dorsey.
Present.
Councilmember Arthur.
Present.
Councilmember Purvis.
Present.
President James.
Here.
Councilmember McCraney.
Here.
Councilmember Armstrong.
Here.
Councilmember Hollander. Councilmember Mulvihill.
Here.
Councilmember Kramer. Councilmember Blackwell.
Here.
Councilmember Fox.
Here.
Councilmember Fowler.
Here.
Councilmember Triplett.
Here.
Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Councilmember Winkler.
Here.
Councilmember Parker. Councilmember Piagentini. Councilmember Benson.
Present.
Councilmember George. Councilmember Engel.
Present.
Councilmember Peden. Councilmember Flood.
Here.
Councilmember Holton Stewart.
Here.
Councilmember Ackerson. Councilmember Hollander. Councilmember Kramer. Councilmember Peden. And Councilmember Ackerson. Mr. President, you have 21 and a quorum present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, we are still in the orange zone. Our community has lost 6 people this past week. Our confirmed COVID cases have increased by 2,379 in the last week. And we have good news, though, in that there's now an approved vaccination for kids 6 months to 5 years. To find out where you can get your child vaccinated, please visit vaccines.gov or call the Louisville Health Helpline at 502-912-8598. And please keep those families who have been touched by COVID in your thoughts and prayers. Last, we lost a true hero on June the 6th. Alderman Lawrence Montgomery passed away at the age of 87. Mr. Montgomery worked with countless Louisville families in his role as president and CEO of Hathaway and Clark Funeral Home, Louisville's oldest black-owned funeral home. In 1964, he marched with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to end housing discrimination. He was a lifetime member of the NAACP and served in the Army and gave Muhammad Ali his very first job. Please keep his wife, his 3 children, and numerous other relatives in your prayers. And with that, I would ask for a moment of silence. Thank you. All right, Councilwoman McCraney has been named one of the Kentucky Gazette's 2022 Notable Women in Kentucky Politics and Government by members of the Gazette and its social media followers. Her nomination was accepted to be included in the Kentucky Gazette's special publication in June. This recognition highlights the Councilwoman McCraney's work in our local government and her contributions to the Louisville metro community. Congratulations, Councilwoman. I got you. All right. Madam Clerk, do we have any addresses to council?
Yes, sir, we do.
Let me remind those addressing the council to please refrain from using any profanity or making derogatory statements to council members. Madam Clerk, please bring them forward.
Christine Marshbank. Ms. Marshbank. Samuel Avery.
Thank you. Good evening. Sam Avery, Renewable Energy Alliance of Louisville. For 10,000 years, from the end of the Ice Age until 1880, the Earth's atmosphere held steady at about 280 parts per million carbon dioxide. Today, it's 420 parts per million, 50% more. Every cubic inch of the Earth's atmosphere now holds 50% more carbon dioxide than it did before we started burning fossil fuel. Now, the last time that carbon dioxide was this concentrated in the Earth's atmosphere was 3.4 million years ago. Sea levels were 78 feet higher than they are now, and temperatures were 7 degrees hotter. Scientists are worried about 1.5 and 2 degrees hotter. Last year, we dumped an additional 40 billion tons of carbon dioxide into the Earth's atmosphere. And this year, we will dump another 41 billion tons. The carbon levels are increasing, and the rate of increase is increasing. There is a worldwide effort to save the Earth's climate from this disaster. The people of Louisville are a small percentage of the Earth's total population. And we cannot take on this problem alone. But we can take on our part of this problem right here and right now. In February of 2020, we did take on our part of this problem when this body passed a resolution for 100% renewable energy county-wide, community-wide, by 2040. And for city operations by 2030. We are now a quarter of the way to 2030. We at REAL said, and have always said, that we would love to make this transition to renewable energy in partnership with LG&E. But we've also said that if they won't do it, we will find someone who will. There are some forward-looking people in the Office of Advanced Planning and Sustainability who are seriously looking into the possibility of what's called partial municipalization. That is, the idea of the city itself owning the means of transmitting, distributing, and I hope generating renewable energy for city-owned buildings. That is the part of the renewable energy, the part of the energy that this body is responsible for. This is an issue Metro Council will have to face. Our organization, REAL, is presenting a Zoom program on municipalization at 7 p.m. on June 29th with a director of the Office of Advanced Planning and an outside expert. You are all invited, but you must register. I will leave flyers here with further information. And I gave those flyers to someone who made copies, and she said she was going to distribute them. I am not sure that municipalization is the answer, but I am sure that exploring this possibility is something we can do now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lenore Slosky? Slosky, you got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ready? Thank you for allowing me to voice my opinion on the future of LMAS, and thank you to my representative, Cassie Chambers Armstrong, for encouraging me to take this step. Each of you has a packet with what I would be saying if I had 15 minutes to talk. On page 2 is a little bit about me. Internet marketing says that puppy pictures get the most attention. So I'm hoping that'll work. You'll take it with you, you'll say, "Aw," and then you'll read it. So the public often thinks of LMAS as a shelter, and as a shelter, LMAS is at the top of the game. We have a world-class facility and the crowning achievement of no-kill status. That said, LMAS is not Louisville Metro Animal Shelter, it is Louisville Metro Animal Services. I believe the time has come to move beyond the walls of the shelter to truly become a no-kill community. Louisville has hundreds of unofficial, unrecognized, and often vilified volunteers who support them in the community. It's often said if you want something to do something to help LMAS, volunteer at the shelter. This perpetuates the idea that animal services begins and ends inside the shelter walls while devaluing these vital support services. In 2021, 72% of the stray dogs arriving at the shelter came in via the public. Again, more details in your packet. We're not the enemy. It's time to bring the two sides together in a positive, collaborative effort of input and action to improve the lives of pets in Louisville. A good start is removing barriers to accessing services. This starts with communication about availability. Their phones have said they're closed on Saturdays for at least 2 years now when they're open. There's no published information on adjustments like holiday hours, and it leads to intake hours that we need more than 22% of the hours in the week. Again, all the details are in your packet, but we need changes to support the community. Providing support to the community leads to another issue, how to solve our stray dog problem. Unfortunately, LMAS's limited resources are depleted by a catch-22 of not addressing the underlying problems, leaving no funds or staff to establish programs to stop strays from being created in the first place. We need the resources to work on solutions to this problem. We have to work from a positive side to support pet owners through education, meeting specific needs, and ultimately, if needed, an owner surrender program that keeps these dogs from becoming unclaimed strays. I look to Metro Council as our leaders for help creating an environment where LMAS can move outside the shelter walls, transitioning from Louisville Metro Animal Shelter to Louisville Metro Animal Services, becoming truly a no-kill community. Thank you for listening to my opinion, and I appreciate all your time. Hopefully this year good things will happen. Thank you.
Mr. President, that concludes the addresses to council.
Thank you. Next, we have approval of council minutes for the regular meeting of June the 9th, 2022. Are there any corrections or deletions?
Motion to accept.
Motion by Councilman Triplett, second by Councilman Winkler. Minutes have been properly moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. These minutes are approved as written. Next, we will have approval of the following committee minutes, all in 2022. Regular Committee of the Whole, June 9th, 2022. Regular Planning and Zoning Committee, June the 14th, 2022. Regular Labor and Economic Development Committee, June the 14th, 2022. Regular Public Works Committee, June the 14th, 2022. Regular Government Oversight and Audit Committee, June the 14th, 2022. Regular Community Affairs, Housing, Health, and Education Committee, June the 15th, 2022. Regular Public Safety Committee, June the 15th, 2022. Regular Appropriations Committee, June the 15th, 2022. Regular Parks and Sustainability Committee, June the 16th, 2022. Regular Committee on Equity and Inclusion, June the 16th, 2022. Regular Budget Committee, June the 16th, 2022. Special Budget Committee, June the 21st, 2022. Are there any corrections or deletions?
Motion to accept.
And motion by Councilman Triplett, second by Councilman Piagentini. Minutes been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. These minutes are approved as written. Madam Clerk, please let the record reflect that Councilman Winkler is going to take the chair. Madam Clerk, do we have any communications from the mayor?
So noted, and yes, sir, we do.
Please read those into the record.
Dear President James, in accordance with the Kentuckiana Works Greater Louisville Workforce Development Board Ordinance, I am reappointing the following: Kim Blanding, a reappointment term expires June the 30th, 2025. Stacy Wade, a reappointment term expires June the 30th, 2025. Chris Schremser, a reappointment term expires June the 30th, 2025. Dr. Ty Handy, a reappointment term expires July the 28th, 2025. Your prompt action on these reappointments is most appreciated. Sincerely, Greg Fisher, Mayor. Dear President James, in accordance with the Ethics Ordinance, I'm reappointing the following: Kelly Morris, a reappointment term expires June the 30th, 2025. Dolores Pregliasco, a reappointment term expires June the 30th, 2025. Robert Boyd, a reappointment term expires June the 30th, 2025. Michael Oyler, a reappointment term expires June the 30th, 2025. Your prompt action on this appointment is most appreciated. Sincerely, Greg Fisher, Mayor. Dear President James, in accordance with the Volunteer Fire District's Ordinance, I'm appointing the following to the Jeffersontown Fire Protection District Board: Leslie Graft Vincent, a new appointment. Term expires June the 30th, 2025. Your prompt action on this appointment is most appreciated. Sincerely, Greg Fisher, Mayor. Dear President James, in accordance with the Cemetery Ordinance, I'm appointing the following to the board: Gina Skodorsky, a new appointment. Term expires April the 13th, 2025. Your prompt action on this appointment is most appreciated. Sincerely, Greg Fisher, Mayor. Dear President James, in accordance with the ordinance, I'm appointing the following staff to the newly Review Overlay District Committee to represent the Planning Commission: Andrea Laligo, a new appointment. Term expires February the 26th, 2023. Your prompt action on these appointments is most appreciated. Sincerely, Greg Fisher, Mayor. Dear President James, I am appointing the following to the Tax Appeals Board: Dino Johnson, a temporary Metro Council appointment. A term expires August 31st, 2022. Denise Pusateri, a temporary appointment. Term expires August 31st, 2022. Linda English, a temporary appointment. Term expires August 31st, 2022. Jessica Ziring, a temporary appointment. Term expires August 31st, 2022. Lori O'Coon, temporary appointment. Term expires August 31st, 2022. Clem Russell, temporary appointment. Term expires August 31st, 2022. Darlene Lovely, temporary appointment. Term expires August 31st, 2022. This is to be read into the record. Metro Council approval for these appointments is not required. Sincerely, Greg Fisher, Mayor. Dear President James, I am appointing the following to the Community Action Partnership: T. Gonzalez, a new appointment. Term expires. It doesn't expire, sorry. This is to be read into the record only. Metro Council approval is not required. Sincerely, Greg Fisher, Mayor. Read in full.
Thank you. Those appointments needing council approval will be forwarded to the Government Oversight and Audit Committee. Our next order of business is the consent calendar. The consent calendar comprises items 22 through 35. Are there any additions or deletions? Oh, sorry. Madam Clerk, please let the record reflect that I'm back at the chair. Madam Clerk, a second reading of these items, please.
Item 22, an ordinance appropriating $8,800 from District 21 Neighborhood Development Funds to the Public Works to Integrated Services, Inc. for landscape maintenance at the South 3rd Street and Southern Parkway Interchange Ramp. Item 23, an ordinance appropriating $10,000 from District 2 Neighborhood Development Funds through the Office of Management and Budget to Boys and Girls Club, Inc. for reading, art, cooking, gardening, torch, and Youth of the Month Club programs at the Newburgh Club. Item 24, an ordinance appropriating $8,000 from Newburgh Neighborhood Development Funds in the following manner: $6,000 from District 21 and $2,000 from District 15 to develop Louisville for Center for Neighborhoods paint project on Taylor Boulevard. Item 25, the following legislation was forwarded from the Community Affairs, Housing, Health, and Education Committee. Item 25, a resolution honoring Augusta Y. Thomas by dedicating the corner of Shasta Trail and Lex Avenue as Augusta Y. Thomas Way in her honor. I'm sorry, sir. Items 22 through 24 were assigned to the Appropriation Committee. The following legislation was assigned to the Government Oversight and Audit Committee. Item 26, appointment of Colonel Dietrich Briscoe to the Deputy Sheriff Merit Board. Term expires June 13, 2023. Item 27, appointment of David Beck to the Commission on Public Art, COPA Board, term expires October the 15th, 2025. Item 28, appointment of Elisa Richardson to the Code Enforcement Board, term expires February the 9th, 2025. Item 29, appointment of Chris Wantland to the Code Enforcement Board, term expires February the 9th, 2025. Item 30, appointment of Marty Ruby to the Police Merit Board, term expires June the 1st, 2026. Item 31, reappointment of Dr. Cheryl Anderson to the Police Merit Board, term expires June the 1st, 2026. Item 32, a reappointment of Lula Howard to the Board of Zoning Adjustment, term expires June the 30th, 2025. Item 33, a reappointment of Marita Willis to the Metropolitan Sewer District Board, term expires June the 30th, 2025. The following legislation was forwarded from the Labor and Economic Development Committee. Item 34, a resolution approving the granting of local incentives to Distilled Spirits Epicenter LLC and any subsequent assignees or approved affiliates thereof pursuant to the KRS 154, subchapter 32. The following legislation was forwarded from Public Safety Committee. Item 35, a resolution authorizing the mayor to make application for and upon approval to enter into an agreement with the Kentucky Office of Homeland Security, KOHS, to execute any documents which are deemed necessary by KOHS to facilitate and administer the project and to act as the authorized correspondence for this program in the amount of $277,000 for the purchase of a rehab and response vehicle to be administered by the Louisville Metro Police Department. Read in full.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a second? A motion by Councilman Triplett, seconded by Councilman Winkler. The consent calendar has been properly moved and seconded, requiring a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll call? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll for those that are not present in chambers?
Councilmember Bowens.
Yes.
Councilmember Shanklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Dorsey.
Yes.
Councilmember Arthur. Did you say yes? Yes. Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Councilmember Fowler.
Yes.
Councilmember Flood.
Yes.
Mr. President, you have 26 yes votes.
Thank you. The consent calendar passes. Madam Clerk, reading of item number 36, please.
An ordinance relating to the zoning of property located at 3323 and 3325 Frace Hill Road containing approximately 15.22 acres and being in Louisville Metro, case number 21 zone 0102, amendment by substitution, read in full.
Motion to approve.
Peden.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Peden, second by Councilman Piagentini. The ordinance is before us. Is there any discussion? Councilwoman Flood.
Thank you, Mr. President. This property, they're asking to change from R4 to R7 and C2 with landscape waivers and variances. This was for a 312 multifamily unit with 13 structures on 15.22 acres. The Planning Commission meeting that was held on April the 12th, Commissioner Mims identified access issues, and the case was continued until May the 12th, at which time the issue of not having two distinct points of ingress and egress was not rediscussed. At this time, I would like to recognize Councilman Marcus Winkler. This is in his district, and an amendment by substitution was proffered in committee and was voted out unanimously.
Thank you.
To overturn the decision.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Winkler.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Madam Chair. I think Madam Chair highlighted the issues pretty succinctly. I made detailed comments in the committee meeting. This property is essentially a triangle, and when you get down to the road frontage, it's not wide enough to have two distinct points of access. And the commissioners even highlighted this as a potential concern. As the chairwoman indicated, by the time they got to the actual deliberation, though, that discussion had been forgotten and they didn't get to talk about it. Additionally, so what the applicant has done is ask for a waiver to move the second access easement through a neighboring property. The problem is the neighboring property was before us 2 years ago. We rezoned it as a mini storage unit. We put binding elements at that time on the property that said any change to that property would require a public hearing, go to the Planning Commission, and then come back to council. None of those things happened. So if a vote to allow this to move forward would basically say that our own rules don't apply. I would encourage everybody to support what was passed unanimously in committee. The process that's very clearly laid out was not followed with this request, and so would encourage everyone's support in support of the amendment that's in front of you, which is the amendment by substitution that passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Councilman Peden.
I would just like to comment, again, Councilman Winkler's spot on this case, but this is the third one in recent memory, including one of mine, where, again, an apartment complex needed a second entrance, so they allowed them to create that second entrance into the aisles of a grocery store on the outer loop. I mean, that is how you get out, is to go, you head into the parking lot of another thing. Obviously, the two entrance rule is there for a reason. As a former firefighter, the fire service is who requested it many years ago, because when you block one entrance point to a subdivision because you've laid hose lines or something else, you need another way to get into certain things, and that 200 unit limit made sense at the time. Everybody supported it, and now they seem to be looking for many different ways to get around it. The fact that this one is, the fact that the Planning Commission actually approved putting them off into a mini storage unit that has, you probably need a code to get in and out of the garage, or getting in and out of the back parking lot and everything else, is just ludicrous. So my comment is, somebody, perhaps Mr. Winkler, we need to file something next week to very explicitly change that the two entrances are onto public rights of way. And there is no getting a waiver away from that. It is truly a public safety issue that created that rule in the first place. And like I said, this is the third time in very few years that we've circumvented that for the sake of just trying to bypass it. And that kind of bugs me. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Hollander.
I'm sorry, I did not mean to cue in. I may have been anticipating the next budget item.
You're just anxious. I got you. All right. Councilwoman Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just to reiterate what Councilman Peden and Councilman Winkler both have expressed, you know, I know of cases where the second entrance is a private road. And what are we doing? So you put the onus on the owners of that road instead of the owners of the apartment complex. I mean, we got to reel this in, people. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this is a ordinance requiring a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please open the roll for voting. Madam Clerk, please call the roll for those that are not present in chambers.
Councilmember Bowens?
Yes.
Councilmember Shanklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dorsey?
Yes.
Councilmember Arthur?
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill?
Yes.
Councilmember Fowler?
Yes.
Councilmember Flood?
Yes.
Mr. President, you have 26 yes votes.
Thank you. The ordinance passes. Madam Clerk, a reading of item number 37, please.
An ordinance relating to the fiscal year 2022-2023 operating budget for the Louisville Jefferson County Metro Government, including appropriation and authorization for operation, maintenance, support, and functioning of the government and its various officers, departments, commissions, institutions, agencies, and other Metro-supported activities as amended, read in full.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a
Motion
second?
to move.
Motion by Councilman Piagentini. I can hear it the second. Oh, Councilman Triplett was the second. The ordinance is before us. Is there any discussion? Councilman Hollander.
Thank you, President James. I will be talking tonight at this point about both the operating and the capital ordinances, although they are, of course, separate ordinances, and we'll be adopting them separately. As you look at both the operating and capital amended ordinances before you, there are technical corrections throughout the documents to properly reflect the intent of the council. Again, all these are online now. Technical corrections include things such as correcting district numbers on capital projects, putting external agency additions in the correct department, as well as language corrections to reflect those changes. Tuesday night at the Budget Committee, new capital project descriptions were read in without a project number. Those project numbers have been corrected. There was a transposition error in one capital project, and one capital project was listed twice, making those two appropriations too large. Those errors have also been corrected in the capital budget before us tonight. Technical corrections such as these do not need a vote, but I just wanted to tell you all that those corrections have been made and are reflected in the document before you. The ordinances before you contain the Budget Committee approved amendments as well as those technical corrections. There is one change that is not in the document before you, but is a technical correction, and I want to point that out. It will be made in the final version that will be presented to the mayor for signature, and that's on page 3 of the operating document, section 1G under LMPD. There's a reference to, and this is from Councilwoman Flood's NDF account, there's a reference to $40,000 LMPD appropriation for community outreach and crime prevention materials. That actually should be $4,000. So that will change, obviously, that language. It also changes the numbers above for LMPD by $4,000, or rather by $36,000. And it will change on page 2, the references to neighborhood development funds. That will be added or increased by $36,000 because that's money that will not be appropriated to LMPD and will stay in Councilwoman Flood's NDF account. That's the only change that is not reflected in the documents before you. And again, we don't need to vote on that. That is a technical correction in an error that was made on Tuesday. The amendments that we are voting on tonight increase funding for road repair and fund the beginnings of an alley restoration plan, the first major renovations of alleys in decades. With federal funds, we have $1 million more for sidewalk repair. Parks receive major investments. We're funding homeless outreach, making sure that efforts downtown don't end abruptly on July 1st, and expanding efforts outside the Watterson Expressway. We've invested more in mental health services at corrections, and we've increased new book and e-book purchases at our libraries. And while we focus on amendments in this process, many things in the recommended budget have not changed, including funding for LMPD, the Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods, and important capital projects like the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, Dare to Care's new distribution center, Waterfront Park West, and Louisville Zoo's new Kentucky Trails. The budgets before you send $11 million to the Rainy Day Fund, a record amount, I believe, and we've reserved $15 million for expenses in the FY24 fiscal year, looking forward to the future and being conservative. Council has not added to the borrowing in the recommended budget, and we've encouraged deferring expenditures where possible until we see a year-end ordinance this December and have a better handle on the current year's surplus, how funds are coming in this year, in this new fiscal year 23, and what expectations are in fiscal year 24 and 25. When I sponsored an ordinance in 2016 to double the amount of time Metro Council had to review and amend the mayor's recommended budget, the process we saw this year is what I hoped for. Significant public input at meetings and in written comments, more time for hearings where questions are posed and answered, and an increased opportunity for deliberations to improve the budget in a fiscally prudent manner. I'm grateful to the public, to my colleagues, to the staff, especially Beth Stenberg and LaTonya Bell, both of whom are joining us virtually tonight, and the administration, especially Monica Harmon and Aaron Jackson, who is in the audience tonight, for all of their work this year. I ask for your approval of these ordinances tonight.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Winkler.
Thank you, President James. I've got just a couple really quick comments. First of all, I'd like to say that I think it's important that we don't just look at the budget in isolation. I think we need to also remember that we've done a great job allocating money through the ARP process over the past few months. And when you couple those two things together, I think we've made historic investments across our city, both across our city geographically, as well as across our city in terms of where the need is. And I think where the top priorities of things that we hear from citizens either in public meetings or in other forums, including areas of public safety, homelessness and panhandling, affordable housing, our parks, libraries, and other built infrastructure, and certainly items like paving and sidewalks. So I'm very proud of the work that we've done here. I think we've done it in a very fiscally responsible way, keeping an eye towards future spending, doing it within the budget that was set forth. And lastly, it would be remiss if I didn't thank Chair Hollander, who's its last budget process. Certainly everyone between LaTanya Bell, Beth Stenberg, everyone on the mayor's staff who worked on it, Councilman Kramer as vice chair. Don't mean this as any slight to anybody else, but certainly want to recognize Councilman Hollander for his work in his last time running through a budget. And we're grateful for your service, and we'll certainly miss your leadership in this process for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilman Piagentini.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, similarly, I think the arc of this budget from what was proposed to the mayor's office to, as Chairman Hollander said, reflects the will and the desire of this council, moves us in a great direction. I made no bones about my concerns of the future liability on the city, potential deficits. I think we made some reasonable moves in protecting against ongoing annual costs, making record investments in infrastructure and deferred maintenance, which really hard to quantify, but there will be improvements to ongoing operating costs through those investments. And I think as Councilman Winkler said, it was done in all areas of this city, which was also great to see. I do want to focus on the thanks, which is LaTanya Bell, Beth Stenberg, of course, the Councilman Winkler, who took my calls a bunch here and there, President James, of course, Vice Chair Kramer of the Budget Committee, and really a special thanks to Chair Hollander, just for, number one, this is his last time going through this. Congratulations to you. But I do want to highlight why I really want to highlight this. You know, obviously Councilman Hollander and I have had a few disagreements on policy from time to time, but your focus on process, particularly around the budget, is so deeply appreciated and results in budgets that, at least for the short time that I've been here, but I know it's gone well beyond that, that gets an incredible level of bipartisan support. And I think that chalks up to the process that I know you are a huge stickler for. So whoever, maybe that's my way of pitching for whoever fills your big shoes, whatever size shoes those are, if we can continue to have that sort of dogged focus on the process that we go through, I think we'll continue to see success. And I think we saw success this year. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman McCraney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that I often say to people that if you show me your checkbook, I can tell you what your priorities are. And if you look at our budget, you can certainly see where our priorities are and what we value. I believe that if you look closely at the budget and if you can really recognize the hard work that was put in it, you will recognize that we really took care of infrastructure. We care about safety. We care about the homeless. And we care about the future indebtedness of this community. We worked very hard together, very closely together, and we came out with a very good budget. People know that last year I voted against both the capital and the operating budget because I did not feel that we invested enough in bold ideas and in bold projects. This year I was very, very proud of the work we put in to get this budget to where it is. And I could not move further from this day without thanking our chairman, Mr. Hollander, Councilman Hollander, District 9. He has been dogmatic, but fair. And his process has always been very unique and straightforward. I have enjoyed working with you, Mr. Hollander. I have enjoyed every bit of being on the Budget Committee since I have been a councilwoman, and I would hope that whoever comes after you will understand that processes are important, and listening is important, and pushback when you need to is important. So thank you for your leadership. I have enjoyed every bit of working under your leadership, Councilman Hollander. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Arthur.
Thank you, Mr. President. I echo the gratitude for everyone else who worked OT on this budget. I'm thankful for the record high investments in social services like youth programs, mental health, violence prevention, and so much more that District 4 desperately needs. So I will be in support of the budget. But before we vote, I'd like to address the people. A huge majority of our city budget, as we know, is your money. All of the city budget that we allocate is to meet your needs. So I believe that you should always have a significant amount of input in how we fund those needs. Shout out to the people who came to community meetings, the few dozens of folks who spoke at budget hearings, the people who showed up to budget hearings and didn't speak but just sat and listened, the couple hundred people who submitted comments, like Kelly, who wanted to see more money invested in public housing, mental health, substance use resources, job creation programs in low wealth neighborhoods. Steve, who wanted to see more money in the budget invested in services that help combat infrastructure and poverty issues. Alicia, who wanted to advocate for more opportunities and programs for our Louisvillians who are incarcerated. I'm proud to say that we address those needs, and we have so much more work left that needs to be done. Every single budget comment is valid. I hope that we always consider the ones that we received this year and in years past. And I want the people to know that nobody on this Metro Council is 100% satisfied with the city budget, just like I'm sure that you are not 100% satisfied with the city budget. In fact, I know there are people who are the opposite. You might be angry about it. But my brother, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was very clear in saying that your anger, your discontent, your dissatisfaction is normal. But please use that and channel it into a creative outlet known as direct action. That means submitting budget comments, that means showing up to meetings, that means sending emails, making phone calls, not just to council, but to your fellow constituents, because you have to build power to change power. And please understand that everyone should care about the budget, not just during the so-called budget season, but every season, because we are spending your tax dollars every single day. We had almost 1,000 budget comments last year. This year, we didn't even get to 200. So it looks like the public got soft on Metro Council. Please do not do that. Please keep fighting. Please keep engaging. Please never take a break on this thing that we call justice, because our city knows better than anyone that injustice will never take a break when it's trying to break you. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this is an ordinance requiring a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please open the roll for voting. Madam Clerk, please call the roll for those not present in chambers.
Councilmember Bowens.
Yes.
Councilmember Shanklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Dorsey.
Yes.
Councilmember Arthur.
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Councilmember Fowler.
Yes.
Councilmember Flood.
Yes.
Mr. President, you have 26 yes votes.
Thank you. The ordinance passes. Madam Clerk, a reading of item number 38.
An ordinance relating to the fiscal year 2022-2023 capital budget for the Louisville Jefferson County Metro Government, including appropriations and authorizations of funds of general construction, maintenance, repair, and improvement of the facilities and assets of the government of Louisville Jefferson County and other Louisville Metro supported activities as amended, read in full.
Motion, Winkler.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Winkler, second by Councilman Piagentini. The ordinance is before us. Is there any discussion? Councilman Hollander.
Thank you, President James. This is the capital budget. I think we've already discussed both in the operating budget. I would just thank Councilman Arthur for his comments, particularly about compromise on budgets. I think I've said this every year, and I almost forgot. This isn't the budget that I would write myself. Councilman Kramer and I have talked about this today. I don't think that any one of us in this room would have written this exact same budget. So there is an opportunity for us to all work together and come up with something that we can all think will move this city forward, and I believe this will do it. I'd ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Is there any further discussion? Madam Clerk, I can't see the screen.
Mine's still on the last item that we voted on.
We're still stuck on the last vote. All right. No further discussion. Madam Clerk, please open the roll for voting. Stand by.
It's open.
Okay, now we can vote. Madam Clerk, please call the roll for those that are not present in chambers.
Councilmember Bowens?
Yes.
Councilmember Shanklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dorsey?
Yes.
Councilmember Arthur?
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill?
Yes.
Councilmember Fowler?
Yes.
Councilmember Flood?
Yes.
Mr. President, you have 26 yes votes.
Thank you. The ordinance passes. Madam Clerk, our meeting item number 39, please.
An ordinance approving the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget for the Transit Authority of River City, TARC. Read in full.
Thank you. May I have a motion by Councilman Piagentini, second by Councilman Peden. The ordinance is before us. Is there any discussion? Councilman Hollander.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the approval of the TARC budget, which is statutorily required. I will just remind everyone that the TARC budget does not include Louisville Metro government funds. It is some taxpayer money and some federal money. There is a TARC board which vets and approves this budget. We had a full hearing about this at the Budget Committee, and approval of this budget is statutorily required so that TARC can keep operating on July 1st. I'd ask for your approval. This is only on old business because Councilman Mulvihill will want to abstain from this. It passed out of the Budget Committee unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Mulvihill.
Yes, due to my employment with TARC, I will be abstaining from this, but thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, is there any further discussion? I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll for voting? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll for those that are not in chambers?
Councilmember Bowens?
Yes.
Councilmember Shanklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dorsey?
Yes.
Councilmember Arthur?
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill?
Abstain for the reasons previously given.
Councilmember Fowler?
Yes.
Councilmember Winkler? Councilmember Flood?
Yes.
Mr. President, you have 24 yes votes and 1 abstention.
Thank you. The ordinance passes. Colleagues, I'm going to take a moment of presidential privilege. We have had the privilege of working with a great person who has handled our budget year after year after year, and that is Councilman Hollander. And this is his last budget, and he's done it perfectly once more, and I just think we need to recognize him for all of his work on his last budget.
Speech.
Speech. Do you have anything you'd like to say, Councilman Hollander?
Only that I'm still here for 6 months. You haven't seen the last of
All
me
right.
yet. Thank you very much.
All right. Well deserved. Madam Clerk, a reading of item number 40, please.
An ordinance creating a new section of Chapter 113 of the Louisville Metro Code of Ordinances, LMCO, requiring Louisville Ford to produce a report detailing best practices to promote public safety for late-night businesses. Read in full.
Thank you. May I have a
Motion to
motion and
move.
a second, please?
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Triplett.
Second, Fox.
Second by Councilman Fox. The ordinance is before us. Is there any discussion? Councilman Fox.
Thank you, Mr. President. This passed on a split vote out of committee, 3-2, with a number of pretty good ideas raised. The original, or the sponsor, is Councilwoman Cassie Armstrong, and with your blessing, I'd give it to her to speak to. Thank you.
Councilwoman Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. President. To skip ahead to the end, I'm going to say a few words and then ask for your support for a motion to table this at the council level. So I think a lot of us agree on the intent of what we're trying to do here, that getting information out to businesses about best practices is a good thing. The more information that we can give to folks, the better. About 30 other cities have done this and provided this information. And a lot of folks have said, hey, if I were opening a late night business or if I had one, I could learn a lot by looking through this. However, some folks have concern that because this is an ordinance, as opposed to a resolution, that it's creating a section of the code that could somehow pave the way for additional regulations. I will be very straightforward. Right now, the ordinance says in 3 to 4 different places that the intent is to provide information, resources, and best practices. We're not intending to place any obligations on any businesses. I have some proposed amendments to add to the 3 times we say that to make it 5 times that we say that the intent is not to create any regulations, obligations, or things that businesses have to do. However, my only goal in doing this is to make sure that we get this best practices report, with which a lot of work has happened over the past year, released and out into the community so that we can be done with this project. And so if we believe as a council that a resolution will do that, I am happy to turn this ordinance into a resolution. I had thought about trying to do that on the floor tonight. However, I believe, especially hearing all of these great words about Councilman Hollander's commitment to process, that a better process would be to go make sure that everyone has time to review something that would transform the ordinance into a resolution so that we can all come back and consider it in a few weeks. With that, I will make a motion to table this and would ask for your support.
May I have a second?
Second.
Please? We have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It is tabled at the council level. Thank you. Madam Clerk, a reading of item number 41.
An ordinance in support of the Louisville Metro government adopting a traffic safety initiative known as Vision Zero, as amended, read in full.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a second?
Motion to move.
Motion by Councilman Triplett, second by Councilman Piagentini. The ordinance is before us. Is there any discussion? Councilman George.
Thank you, President. In Metro, 1 person is killed every 3 days in a roadway injury. I'm reminded of that fact when working with our dedicated engineering and planning staff within Public Works and advocates like Janet Heston, whose son was killed crossing New Cut Road in 2019. Public Works has been working to implement proven safety countermeasures for many years, with the understanding that fatalities are preventable and roadways can be designed to anticipate human error. By legislatively adopting this traffic safety initiative known as Vision Zero, we're doing 3 things. First, we're setting a goal of 0 fatalities by 2050. Second, we're updating our existing report and outlining action items. And third, we're establishing reporting requirements. In doing this, we're setting priorities, and through planning, we'll enhance collaboration and we'll create more federal funding opportunities to make improvements in Metro. The ordinance passed out of committee unanimously, but is on old business tonight thanks to Councilmember Dorsey's amendment to strengthen the process by adding Metro Council as a partner in the process. And I would defer to Councilmember Dorsey to add anything additional.
Thank you. Councilman Dorsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. President. Madam Chair said it perfectly. I just made a simple amendment to make sure that the Metro Council was a part of the planning process, as many of us are very intimately involved with the infrastructure of our districts. I wanted to make sure that this wasn't simply just based on raw data, that council members could really inform using the voice of the people and those that we are in contact with every day via our constituency services, to make sure that the plan really incorporated pieces or pain points that our community members have told us about that may not simply be just as obvious via the data or any analytical numbers that we could provide, that anecdotal component being intimate members of our particular district. So I thank Madam Chair for adding that, and I thank the committee for supporting it. And that's all, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Piagentini.
Thank you, Mr. President. I voted yes for this in committee. I'm voting yes for this tonight. But I do want to say something because I do have some concerns that I want on the record. Number one, I like being honest with the public, and not everybody gets to see all these committee hearings, but the presentation that we got very clearly stated that 70+% of fatalities on roadways have to do with, let's just broadly call them public user error, right? People crossing places where they're not supposed to cross in the middle of the night, drunk drivers, people speeding, and breaking all other kinds of laws. I don't think it's possible to have 0 traffic fatalities. There are cities and areas that originated this plan in Europe that are 20+ decades ago that aren't even close to getting to 0 fatalities. They have made progress, to be clear, on reducing fatalities, and that's a terrific goal. And I'm all bought in on reducing fatalities on our streets. In addition, the federal government, in their infinite wisdom, prohibits submitting grants to local jurisdictions like ours unless we adopt a plan like this. This is most of the reason why I'm fine with voting for it, because I quite frankly think it's absurd that the federal government does that. We should have applications with great ideas. If those great ideas pass muster, and the federal government should fund them, but instead they want us to make value statements and pass ordinance like this before we make those applications. I don't like that process. I'm not a huge fan of it. But if this unlocks federal dollars to help with our infrastructure and make our roads safer, I am all for it. My philosophical issue, and why I appreciated Councilwoman Dorsey putting her amendment in here that consults with council. I looked at other jurisdictions that have adopted this plan. Some of the ideas, not all, but some of the ideas that came out of those jurisdictions are quite frankly incredibly scary. One, for example, that came out of New York City was to eliminate 50% of your downtown parking, literally to make it impossible for people to park in your downtown district, so people stop driving to your downtown district. That might save a few lives, I'll admit, and at the same time, that'll destroy your downtown district, okay? So another idea is to basically take Dixie Highway and make it 2 lanes, right? Everybody will be at a complete snail's pace, driving at about 15 miles an hour, and so even if they hit somebody, it won't be fatal, okay? I'm not a fan of these types of ideas. There are many other ideas that are excellent ideas, though, and why I appreciate what Councilwoman Dorsey did, which is to create language in here that ensures that council is consulted on these ideas to make sure they balance the needs of the public. Again, I'm all for reducing fatalities, but there is such a thing as a cost to, there is an impact to everybody else, and we can't, it is almost impossible to hold everybody else, because that's who's held accountable here through taxpayer dollars, accountable for individuals who make bad decisions like speeding. I would also let everybody know that most of the adopted Vision Zero plans call for significantly increased enforcement of traffic laws, including even the New York City plan that I was looking at. So that is a component of this that I think we need to talk about too moving forward. But thank you. I'm still in support of it. I just wanted to voice some of my concerns as we move to implement this. If council, as I said in committee, if Councilwoman George was leading this effort, I would have zero concern with how it would be implemented. But unfortunately, she's another council person that's leaving us this go around. And so it's going to be somebody else. And just because I don't know who that is, I'm glad to hear that there'll be a process for us to participate. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilman Arthur.
Thank you so much. I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Thank you, Councilman Arthur, to be added as a co-sponsor. Councilwoman George shakes her head yes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. This is an ordinance requiring a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll for those that are not in chambers?
Councilmember Bowens?
Yes.
Councilmember Shanklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dorsey?
Yes.
Councilmember Arthur?
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill? Councilmember Mulvihill? Yes, sir. Councilmember Fowler?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. We got you. Councilmember Winkler? Councilmember Flood?
Yes.
Mr. President, you have 25 yes votes.
Thank you. The ordinance passes. Madam Clerk, a reading of item number 42.
An ordinance of the Louisville Jefferson County Metro Government, the issuer, authorizing the issuance of bonds in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $119 million and denominated Louisville Jefferson County Metro Government Industrial Bond Building Revenue Bonds, Boyd Real Property LLC Project, Series 2022, the bonds, approving and authorizing the execution and delivery of a trust indenture the indenture between the issuer and U.S. Bank Trust Company, National Association as trustee, the trustee, securing the bonds. 2, a lease agreement by and between the issuer and Boyd Real Property LLC, the leasee. 3, a bond purchase agreement by and among the issuer, the leasee, and the Boyd Company, the bond purchaser. 4, an in lieu of tax payments agreement by and between the issuer and the leasee. 5, a home office payments agreement by and among the issuer, the trustee, and the leasee, and the bond purchaser. And 6, any and all other related documents and the taking of other related action as amended, read in full.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a second? Motion by Councilman Piagentini.
Second.
Second by Councilman Triplett. The ordinance has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilwoman Dorsey.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is just a simple addition. As many may be familiar with, in labor and economic development, we've taken a stronger position when providing incentives to institutions and companies to review that with the council member and to make sure that there is a formal agreement in place when needed through either having an MOU or a CBA. When this originally started, there were some, I won't say promises, but leveling or agreements made with the community. Councilwoman Bowen subsequently did meet with the institution and was able to draft that MOU CBA on behalf of the community in regard to making sure that the things that were discussed were put in writing so that the community does have a formal document in place in order to hold the institution accountable for those promises made. Mr. President, as this is in Councilwoman Bowen's district, I'd like to give the floor to her to add any additional context.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Bowens.
Thank you, President. This company has a long history, actually making changes in the neighborhood, back their neighborhood, so will take access off the expressway. When Councilwoman Dorsey asked for MOU, they were quick to act and be ready to make any changes that was needed. So I asked your approval on this because this company is needed in the West End. District 1. They will bring 1,000 jobs to the community. They have an excellent training facility on campus that will allow anyone that needs to be certified or move up the access to that. And I ask your approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this is an ordinance requiring roll call vote. Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll for those that are not present in chambers?
Councilmember Bowens?
Yes.
Councilmember Shanklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dorsey?
Yes.
Councilmember Arthur?
Yes.
Councilmember Hollander? Councilmember Mulvihill?
Yes.
Councilmember Fowler?
Yes.
Councilmember Winkler?
Yes.
Councilmember Flood?
Yes.
Mr. President, you have 26 yes votes.
Thank you. The ordinance passes. Madam Clerk, a reading of item number 43, please.
An ordinance appropriating $5,000 from neighborhood development funds in the following manner. $5,000 from District 21 to develop Louisville for the Southwest Dream Team to print South Point Scenic Area map cards, South Point Scenic Area signage, administrative fees for the facilitation of the Taylor New Cut Network, and the hiring of a consultant for corridor branding of the Taylor New Cut Network. Read in full.
Thank you.
Motion to move.
Have a motion by Councilman Triplett. Have a second? Second. Second by Councilman Piagentini. The ordinance is before us. Is there any discussion? Councilman Blackwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the ordinance is pretty self-explanatory, very detailed there what it's for. This is the primary sponsor is Councilwoman George, and the current amount that we have is the $5,000 listed, but the requested amount was $14,100, so it's on old business in order to request additional support. Councilwoman George, I'm sure, would love to be called on to explain further.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman George.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Councilman Blackwell. So this appropriation and the request from Southwest Dream Team is really to further a lot of the work that has happened in the past around the South Point Scenic area. In the past, there had been maps, and during COVID, Southwest Dream Team shifted their approach with rack cards. Again, the goal is to really be able to get these into different businesses, public spaces like libraries, and tourist hubs, all with the goal of being able to generate more people south to enjoy some of our assets. And so the funding that they're requesting will go to support both the rack cards in addition to signage that's important. Finally, we are partnering with Southwest Dream Team to advance the work of the Taylor New Cut network. That's the network that is working to advance the goals of the original Taylor New Cut corridor, implementing all things safety, advancing mobility, and economic development. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Holton Stewart.
Yes, please add District 25 for 2,000.
District 25 for 2,000. Thank you. And Councilman Triplett.
Please add District 15 for $2,000 more.
District 15 for $2,000. Thank you. And Councilwoman Fowler.
District 14 for 1,000, please.
District 14 for 1,000. And Councilman Dr. President Blackwell.
District 12 for 2,000.
District 12 for 2,000. And Councilwoman Dorsey.
District 3 for 1,000, please.
Thank you. District 3 for 1,000. And please add District 6 for 500, Madam Clerk. And where does that leave us?
I'm in the queue, Mr. President.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilman Fox.
Thank you. District 13 for $2,000.
I'm sorry, sir. So our total right now is 13,600. We only need 500 more.
District 13 for 500 more.
Thank you,
District
sir.
13 for 500 more. All right. Any further discussion? All right. May I have a motion and a second for an amendment?
I'm sorry, one moment. So, sir, do you mind if we make that 600? I typed in President James is wrong. Could we take 600
really?
from you, sir?
Yes,
I'm
ma'am,
so
that's
sorry.
fine.
I'm so sorry.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
ma'am.
much. Thank you.
All right. May I have a motion and a second for the amendment?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Triplett, second by Councilman Piagentini. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the amended ordinance is before us. Councilman Fox, you want to give any more? It's just checking.
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, all right. All right, the amended ordinance is before us. Madam Clerk, please open the roll for voting. Madam Clerk, please call the roll for those that are not present in chambers.
Councilmember Bowens?
Yes.
Councilmember Shanklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dorsey?
Yes.
Councilmember Arthur? Councilmember Mulvihill? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Arthur, I didn't hear you, sir.
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill?
Yes.
Councilmember Fowler?
Yes.
Councilmember Winkler?
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Flood?
Yes.
Mr. President, you have 26 yes votes.
Thank you. The ordinance passes. Madam Clerk, a reading of item number 44, please.
An ordinance relating to the zoning of properties located at 10410 and 10414 Old Preston Highway, containing approximately 9.93 acres and being in Louisville Metro, case number 21 Zone 0104, as amended, read in full.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilman Ingalls, second by Councilman Piagentini. The ordinance is before us. Is there any discussion? Councilwoman Flood.
Yes, and Mr. President, may I have a 30-second personal point of privilege real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to publicly thank Councilman Scott Reed, who's my vice chair, for literally stepping up and fulfilling the job as chair last week, literally at a moment's notice. So I just wanted to publicly say thank you. He did a yeoman's job.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Thank you, Councilman.
On this item, before we get started on there was a binding element that needed to be added, and we just got clearance on it probably right before the committee of the whole. So if you'll allow me to do that and move the amendment, I'll go into the discussion.
Yes, ma'am.
And that'll be that binding element number 11 as it exists now will become binding element number 12. And this will be binding element number 11 will read this way. If KYTC determines that the installation of a traffic light at the intersection of Preston Highway and Maple Spring Drive is appropriate, the developer shall, upon request, make a one-time contribution of $25,000 to that project. Any such request must be made within 5 years after the final certificate of occupancy for the site has been issued, after which no contribution shall be required. And I move that amendment.
Thank you. We have a second by Councilman Triplett. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Please continue, Councilwoman Flood.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is to allow a construction of 174-unit multifamily apartments. The concerns were traffic, and this is a very heavily karst area. Old Preston Highway is just that. It's a remnant of an old 2-lane Preston Highway. There's no room for construction, and it's very narrow. During the hearings, there was no attempt to make mitigation to traffic issues or concerns. Therefore, we have binding element number 11. I'm going to explain my vote as I go through this because this is in my district. However, I tonight cannot in good conscience support this project because I know the area. I have lived in this area most of my life. In fact, if you stand on Preston Highway and look down on the Jefferson Freeway or Snyder Freeway as it's called now, that's where my house was. I have seen what happens when karst areas develop. I'm not a karst expert. I've just watched when they put a basement in on our house. The rock didn't blow, it just shifted and moved. There are sinkholes in this area for some reason because it's heavily karst, but there are sinkholes that cause all types of issues from underground springs to the shifting of rock to open caverns with even structures that go into some of these holes. There's nothing that will make me feel good about the project just because I have a gut feeling. And it doesn't mean, my gut feelings are not in the land development code, but I believe that I owe it to the constituents of this area who know the area, who live there as long as I have or longer, that I have the same worrisome woes that they do. And I cannot in good conscience vote for a project that I believe in my heart of hearts could suffer irreparable damage, not tomorrow, not next year, but maybe 15 to 20 years down the road. I just can't do it. And I'm not asking anyone else to follow my lead. I just know that there are not the reasons and the way I feel are not in the land development code, and it is not a reason to try to overturn the project. I just cannot vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this is an ordinance requiring roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Madam Clerk, please call the roll for those that are not present in chambers.
Councilmember Bowens?
Yes.
Councilmember Shanklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dorsey?
Yes.
Councilmember Arthur?
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill?
Yes.
Councilmember Fowler?
Mr. President, can I explain my vote, please?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'll be voting no, because my husband's little 10-year-old cousin back in 1990, December 10th, 1980, was struck and killed while boarding a school bus at that very intersection. And it was sickening then, it's sickening now, and I just don't want to see any more little kids get killed unnecessarily. So I will be a no vote.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
I'm sorry. Councilmember Winkler? Councilmember Flood?
No.
Mr. President, you have 22 yes votes and 3 no votes.
Thank you. The ordinance passes. Madam Clerk, a reading of item number 45, please.
An ordinance relating to the zoning and form district of and revised detailed district development plan for properties located at 3200 and 3201 Dupin Drive and 5400 Minor Lane, containing approximately 2.63 acres in Bean and Louisville Metro, case number 21 zone 0162, read in full.
Thank you. May I have a motion?
Motion to move.
Motion by Councilman Triplett, second by Councilman Piagentini. The ordinance is before us. Councilwoman Flood.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is one of the other cases that we got approval on a binding element prior to our meeting this afternoon. So I would like to go ahead and follow that, if you don't mind, put this binding element first before we discuss the property. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Binding element number 12 will become binding element number 14. And binding element number 13 becomes binding element number 12. The new binding element will read, if it is determined that a gated access to Dupin Drive is needed for the purpose of providing an alternative route for emergency vehicles, then any necessary break in the berm required in binding element number 9 to make the connection shall not be considered a violation of binding element number 9. In addition, a revised development plan depicting only the changes contemplated by this binding element shall be staff approval and shall not trigger the review of requirements of binding element number 14. And I move that amendment.
Second, Fox.
Thank you. You have a second by Councilman Fox. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Councilwoman Flood.
Thank you. The applicant is to demolish a single-family structure and expand the development south of the site into the other site. The property is surrounded on 3 sides by PEC, Planned Employment Centers, zoned land. It's industrial development. Proposed request is a warehouse. The ponds will be modified to ensure appropriate floodplain compensation on the site, as well as overall detention by a 50% volume to additionally help with the floodplain areas. There is no access from Dupin Drive at this time. There's 25% tree canopy to be planted because they got a 5% reduction for cool roof heat island reducing technology used on the new building. This is a Nicholas project, and one point that folks may want to consider too, that Nicholas was one of the first people to use these cool roof technology, and they've used them on a lot of their warehouse without us ever passing anything and asking them to do it. So, and this is in Councilman Fox's district. He may wish to address us.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Fox.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Chairwoman, and thank you for writing that amendment and getting that added on there. I'm going to support this, and I would ask my colleagues do as well. This is part of Airport Commerce 2 development, and I will remind you all, we passed a TIF for this area back about a year ago. Well, not quite a year ago now, but this TIF is going to provide much-needed infrastructure improvements. It's actually going to get a road and a bridge and a high-powered economic generator when the thing is done. Well, actually during the construction phase and during operational phase. And prior to this, it was a church for about the last 40, 50 years, so we were getting 0. So we're actually going to get 20% off TIF, which at least has us moving in the right direction. But appreciate it, Chairwoman Flood. Again, thank you, and I'll be voting for this and ask you to vote with me as well. Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll for those not present in chambers?
Councilmember Bowens?
Yes.
Councilmember Shanklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dorsey?
Yes.
Councilmember Arthur?
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill?
Yes.
Councilmember Fowler?
Yes.
Councilmember Winkler? Councilmember Flood?
Yes.
Mr. President, you have 25 yes votes.
Thank you. The ordinance passes. Madam Clerk, a reading of item number 46, please.
An ordinance relating to the zoning of an associated parking waiver for property located at 3106 Chenoweth Run Road, containing approximately 1.88 acres and being a Louisville Metro, case number 21 zone 0135, as amended, read in full.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a second? Motion by Councilman
Second.
Piagentini, second by Councilman Triplett. The ordinance is before us. Councilwoman Flood.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a change in zoning from R4 to commercial manufacturing. The applicant proposes a 3-story storage facility with access to Chenoweth Run Road. There was a parking waiver to reduce the required parking spaces from 26 to 10 that was approved by the Planning Commission. Also, we added at the committee level, binding element number 8 was added that says that there's any change of use, any change in density, that it comes back before the Metro Council, or if there's any changes in the binding element. And this is in Councilman Kevin Kramer's district. He may wish to speak with us.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Kramer.
Thank you, and especially thank you, Madam Chair, for the work that you did on this in committee. We appreciate your efforts at adding the binding elements and support them completely. One added little bit of information that to shed light on this particular project. The original intent was to bring those who were going to be using this storage facility. The goal was to bring them in off of Blankenbaker Access, which is it is an access road. It's a public thoroughfare. Chenoweth Run Road is a much more residential street. The goal was to bring them in off of Blankenbaker Access. KYTC felt like that wasn't, the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet did not believe it was appropriate to come off of the access road, and therefore we're left with the Chenoweth Lane entrance. The owner of the project did agree that signage would be appropriate, encouraging larger trucks not to use this particular, not to come off of Blankenbaker Access onto Chenoweth Run from that angle, given the difficulty with the turn. And we did agree to the lower number of parking spaces, as Councilwoman Flood mentioned. It's a storage facility, so it's not, people won't all be there at the same time, so reducing the number of parking spaces necessary is perfectly acceptable. So we're seeking a yes vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this is an ordinance requiring a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll for those that are not in chambers?
Councilmember Bowens?
Yes.
Councilmember Shanklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dorsey?
Yes.
Councilmember Arthur?
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill?
Yes.
Councilmember Fowler?
Yes.
Councilmember Winkler?
Yes.
Councilmember Flood?
Yes.
Mr. President, you have 26 yes votes.
Thank you. The ordinance passes. Madam Clerk, a reading of item number 47.
An ordinance relating to the revised district development plan for property located at 11905 Dixie Highway, containing approximately 2.19 acres and being a Louisville Metro, case number 22 DDP 0009, read in full.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a second? Motion by Councilman Piagentini, second by Councilman Triplett. The ordinance is before us. Is there any discussion? Councilwoman Flood.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a revised development plan for a mini warehouse facility on 2.19 acres. The site was previously rezoned under case 17 zone 1022 to CM commercial manufacturing. The Planning Commission approved the development plan under docket number 18 Dev Plan 1123. However, there was a binding element on the original case that required any changes to the approved development plan to be reviewed by the Louisville Metro Council, and that was missed by staff, so now that is why it is back in front of us at this point in time. And this is in Councilwoman Cindy Fowler's district. She may wish to address us.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Fowler.
And thank you, Mr. President. So, yeah, this, as Councilwoman Flood said, was a revised plan from the 2017 development plan, and it required this to come back to the Planning Commission and the Metro Council. It took 4 years for this to happen. I'm questioning, all along why the buildings were going up and they weren't according to plan. And they finally had to tell me that they had made a mistake. And, I just wonder if other people, other council members have these issues, if it's just me. I've got another one that was a permit to build a house just within the last year, and a connecting sidewalk from on Pendleton Road to Dixie Highway was left off of the development plan. And so now we're trying to figure out how we're going to get that needed sidewalk for, complete streets to Dixie Highway, all because, somebody missed. I don't know. But it's frustrating, folks. I don't know. I'd like to know if other people have these same issues, or it's just my lucky stars. So anyway, I guess I request your approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Is there any further discussion? Councilman Peden.
I would like to remind everyone here in this room, we passed a law specifically because of these mistakes. We passed an ordinance that says before they approve any final building plan, they're supposed to send it back to you as a council person to give you one last look at it so you can notice somebody else, some other eyes. What prompted that, again, entrance to the grocery store, Value Market Shopping Center on the outer loop, that access road that runs right next to Mercy High School, where we practically let them add a whole nother lane to Faganbush, which they weren't supposed to do. That was not part of the original plan we approved in this room, and yet when they submitted a development plan, we blindly stamped it at Public Works. It wasn't supposed to be that way. Consequently, I wrote it up. We voted on it. It is law that they're supposed to come to you, or in this case, Councilwoman Fowler, and say, here's one last look at this. Is everything here? Every sidewalk, every entrance right, all of that stuff. And guess what? They're not doing it. I mean, they will openly admit they're not doing it because, in their words, they can't figure out how to do it. So they're just ignoring it. But it is the law. We passed it. It is in effect, and they are just flat out not doing it at Planning and Zoning or Public Works. And I'm just saying that because here's another one right in front of us. So, I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Is there any further discussion?
I mean, again, there's just no accountability.
Yes, sir.
And can I interject?
Councilwoman Fowler.
Thank you, President James. I'm sorry to interrupt like that. But, the development plans and the plan certains are not, being followed up on. I mean, there are stacks and stacks and stacks of them that are just not being done, even though we voted and put in new money for new employees in planning and design services, new zoning inspectors. I mean, I have still got a road in Fawn Lake subdivision, not a road, the whole subdivision, that is gravel now because it has degraded so badly because they never put the final top coat of asphalt on those roads. And those people, I mean, we've got development companies that are still having their stamps on their development plans when they haven't finished up things that need to be done, that they failed to do 20 years ago. Well, it was like 18 years ago. But, I mean, it is just beyond frustrating, and I just don't know what we do to fix it. So we've got to all join together, though, and figure it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, this is an ordinance requiring roll call vote. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll for those that are not in chambers?
Councilmember Bowens?
Yes.
Councilmember Shanklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dorsey?
Yes.
Councilmember Arthur?
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill?
Yes.
Councilmember James and Blackwell, are you? Oh, I see. There we go. Councilmember Fowler?
A reluctant yes.
Gotcha. Councilmember Winkler? Councilmember Flood?
Yes.
Mr. President, you have 19 yes votes and 6 no votes.
Thank you. The ordinance passes. Madam Clerk, a reading of item number 47, please.
Item 48, an
48,
ordinance
sorry.
relating to the zoning of property located at 8315 Nash Street containing approximately 2.29 acres and being in Louisville Metro, case number 21 zone 0164, read in full.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a
Motion to
second?
move.
Councilman Triplett is the motion. May I have a second? Second by Councilman Fox. The ordinance is before us. Councilwoman Flood.
Yes, this is a change in zoning from C2 to M2. It is for 50 tractor trailer spaces on 2.29 acres. There will be no structures added, only parking areas. There will be some detention areas to address stormwater runoff. The applicant agreed to a binding element also that prohibits the storage of hazardous materials in trucks that are parked on the site. And this is in Councilman Mark Fox district. He would like to, I'm sure, address us.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Fox.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Chairwoman. Those of us in and around Worldport have a problem that's good to have, I suppose, because Worldport's a great neighbor, employs a lot of our citizens, but we have a lot of heavy truck traffic, and on the weekends, some of those operators live in our community. And I was in, for example, Councilwoman George's district last week on a city street, counted 11 semi-tractor trailers parked on Southland Boulevard. This is going to offer 50 parking spaces for semi-tractor trailer operators, and it's going to go a long way toward giving our transportation and long-haul operators some options that are a lot cheaper than the fines and the impoundments. So I'm going to support this. One person spoke in opposition at the Planning Commission, and it largely had to do with drainage, which is legitimate, which has been a problem before this development, and I think MSD, working with MSD, they may have some options worked out there. But I'll be supporting this, and I would ask my colleagues to as well. Thank you again, Mr. President, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Is there any further discussion? Councilman Peden.
I just have a quick question about, and I didn't read all the binding elements. Is there anything in there about idling? Like, are they allowed to run all night long, especially in the winter?
That's a good question. I didn't see it addressed in the legislation at all. I mean, and some trucks are refrigerated. So, you know, the good thing is I am familiar with the area. It's not a residential area.
Okay.
So you have to go at least, I'd say, a half mile before you encounter residences, maybe a quarter to half mile.
Okay. Thank you. Councilwoman George.
Thank you, President. I will certainly be supporting this tonight. In fact, it's everything I can do to not stand up and clap. But I do want to remind my colleagues that this underscores bigger needs in our community around how we manage heavy trucks. And currently, we have recommendations that planning and zoning have delivered related with how we regulate heavy trucks and where they're allowed in our community. And I look forward to having more robust conversation with my colleagues, because I do believe we're all trying to accomplish the same thing, which is get those 11 trucks off of Southland Boulevard that are currently parked in front of a school. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Flood.
Thank you, Mr. President. Those of us who've been on the council for a long time probably remember then when Ron Weston was president, there was a whole lot of cleanup going on in this area, because there was a lot of people who were running commercial type businesses, but it was zone residential. So this is not out of the ordinary for that area. That street, I think Tolls Lane, is what they worked on to get the right zoning in place on some of those businesses that have been there for a while.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll for those that are not in chambers?
Councilmember Bowens?
Yes.
Councilmember Shanklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dorsey?
Yes.
Councilmember Arthur?
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill? It's a yes. Councilmember Fowler?
Yes.
Councilmember Winkler?
Yes.
Councilmember Flood?
Yes.
Mr. President, you have 26 yes votes.
Thank you. The ordinance passes. Before we move on to new business, we have a point of personal privilege. Councilman Hollander.
Thank you, President James. Once you start thanking people, you tend to maybe leave somebody out. We certainly thank LaTanya Bell and Beth Stenberg for their work on the budget process, but you know, we have some late hours. We have meetings that run over. We have a lot of documents, some of which were being uploaded this afternoon, and I really want to thank Sonia and everybody in the clerk's office for all they did as part of this process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody. With that being said, new business comprises items number 49 through 58. Will the clerk please read those items and their assignments to the committee?
The following legislation was assigned to the Appropriations Committee. Item 49, an ordinance appropriating $4,100 from neighborhood development funds in the following manner: $1,000 from District 9, $500 each from Districts 10, 12, 21, and 22, $300 each from Districts 1 and 14, and $250 each from Districts 15 and 23 through the Office of Management and Budget to St. Joseph Catholic Orphan Society for public safety, sanitation, and rentals for the St. Joseph Children's Home Annual Picnic Fundraiser. Item 50, an ordinance appropriating $1,000 from neighborhood development funds in the following manner: $1,000 from District 9 through the Office of Management and Budget to Louisville Independent Business Alliance for the 2022 Buy Local Fair. Item 51, an ordinance amending ordinance number 087, Series 2021, and ordinance number 088, Series 2021, relating to the fiscal year 2021-2022 operating and capital budgets, respectively, by transferring $125,000 from the District 11 Neighborhood Development Fund to the District 11 Capital Infrastructure Fund. The following legislation was forwarded to the Committee on Committees. Item 52, a resolution of the Louisville Metro Council amending the Metro Council Employee Handbook concerning Metro Council social media account usage. Item 53, a resolution of the Louisville Metro Council amending the paid and unpaid time off benefits chapter of the Metro Council Employee Handbook by creating a new section regarding victims of crime and domestic violence leave. The following legislation was assigned to the Labor and Economic Development Committee. Item 54, a resolution determining certain properties at 664 South 5th Street as surplus and not needed for a governmental purpose and authorizing its transfer. The following legislation was assigned to Parks and Sustainability, an ordinance amending provisions of the Chapter 42 of the Louisville Metro Code of Ordinances, LMCO, relating to the request for proposal RFP process for golf course management and to the processes and procedures necessary to close, repurpose, lease, or sell a Metro-owned golf course. The following legislation was assigned to the Planning and Zoning Committee. Item 56, an ordinance relating to the zoning of properties located at 10212 and 10302 Oak Grove Road, containing approximately 68.57 acres and being in Louisville Metro. Case number 21, Zone 0059. Item 57, an ordinance relating to the zoning of property located at 100 North Crestmore Avenue, containing approximately 0.295 acres and being in Louisville Metro. Case number 20, Zone 0126. And item 58, an ordinance amending the Louisville Jefferson County Metro Government Code of Ordinances, Chapter 157, related to floodplain regulations. Read in full.
Thank you. Next, we have announcements. Do we have any council members wishing to make announcements? Hearing none. That concludes our meeting. Our next council meeting after our break for the summer is Thursday, July the 28th, 2022 at 6 p.m. With no further business to discuss, without objection, we stand adjourned.
Read it. It matters if there's eye contact. It matters that the person that is about to touch us